So I talked about mental shift, the soft factors, and also more the harder factors. How do you share gains? How do you put the collaboration down into legal contracts so that you know, well, how to collaborate and how at the end of the whole trip you won't end up in fights, but you all gain. Today we will have two speakers in this session, two sets of speakers, I have to say. We have 4 speakers, we're honored. First is about Airlink, because Dinalog is involved in a lot of projects that they initiate on their own, but we also participate in other projects, and especially with an international connection. So the first is Airlink in our Amsterdam region, which is very important, of course, as an international hub for air freight. Ben Radstaak and later on Reinhard Karsenberg will touch upon the mental shift needed to make that project work. And after that, and I hope those speakers will come in as well, we will talk about the CO3 project, in which a lot of Dutch organizations participate, but also foreign organizations. So we have a Belgian speaker and an American speaker there, who will touch upon the more harder factors of gain sharing and legal frameworks. So first, I want to give the floor to Ben Radstaak.
Yeah, my name is Ben Radstaak. I'm with Air Cargo Netherlands. That's the industry association of the air cargo industry in the Netherlands, mainly centered around Amsterdam Airport Schiphol. And one of our projects is Airlink, and that's building logistical concepts on top of a system we have been developing lately, referred to as E-Link, which helps us to comply with all kinds of rules and regulations you need to comply with before you can send your goods via air. Airlink is one of the 9 projects in a program, a regional program for logistics projects referred to as Seamless Connections, which covers not only the airport but also the Port of Amsterdam and the Green Port, the flower auction in Aalsmeer. So there are basically 3 hubs that have all kinds of programs and working together on several issues like how to collaborate, how to work together with education, with schools, etc., attract young people to the logistics industry, convince local governments of the importance of the logistics industry for the whole region. One of the projects is Airlink, another one is future framing. Reinhard will talk about future framing in the second part. The projects have in common that we try to accelerate the logistics processes by removing bottlenecks and speeding up processes, making it more reliable. Also by connecting between the various initiatives and advancing the several modes in terms of their competitive power and competitive position. Air Cargo Netherlands, our role as an industry association, of course it starts with all kinds of specific interests of a specific group of companies. I don't really like that part of the business because it's usually defensive. Something is coming from the outside which is threatening, and people want us to write a letter to some minister, etc. I'm more in favor of the industry development, improving the processes within the air cargo industry, and we also have several member services, of which our ACN Pass is an important one, which you will show later on in the movie. We try to unite, and we're pretty successful. I think we're now 10 years in existence, to unite several parties who play a role in the air cargo chain. From left to right, the forwarders, who act on behalf of the shippers or the consignees to book the cargo on a plane. Then there's the airlines, obviously they fly the goods around the world. The ground handlers, who load and unload and check and deliver the cargo to and from, or in between, I should say, the airlines and the forwarders. The airports, facilitating the airlines, of course, but also facilitating the warehouses of the ground handlers and the forwarders. And the trucking companies, most of the trucking is subcontracted by the forwarders to the truckers or by the airlines when it's international under airway bill. This is a picture stolen from IATA, with whom we work together very closely on several issues, in particular on e-freight, which means taking away all the documents in the air cargo chain. I mean, we have had computers also in the air cargo industry for decades now, but lots of these computers are quite old-fashioned, legacy systems, etc. But what's even worse, that lots of government authorities around the world are not used to working with IT systems when they want to check goods which enter or leave a country. So in total, in the whole air cargo industry, there are some 38 different kind of documents which are in use around the globe, of which only 20 so far, which are the core documents, have an electronic version. And we're now trying to take out the paper and replace it with digital information to avoid duplicate entering of the information, to speed up the process, to avoid that goods can't enter a country because of missing documents. Then the customs can't see what's this and can we have it or how to taxate it, etc. So there's lots of reasons to improve in terms of efficiency and quality of the air cargo chain, to take the paper out and replace it with digital information. At the same time, and that was the interesting thing why we started this E-Link and AirLink projects, it gives us tools in hands to better plan and collaborate between the parties in the industry. Usually, when goods arrive at an airport, every forwarder will take his own time and go pick up his goods. And when he has to send out goods, he goes on his own way. So there are queues on the Monday morning to pick up all the goods that have arrived over the weekend. There's queues on Friday when they all want to deliver before they go home all the goods that are flying all over the weekend. Because the airline business is typically a 24/7 industry. The forwarders and the shippers and the receivers of the goods are usually Monday, Friday jobs and businesses. Compliance is a big issue. Customs, security, safety, health issues, all kinds of rules and regulations we have to comply with. And we've built for that a system, and that's powered by Cargonaut or cargo community system at Schiphol. And it's called e-cargo receipt, and which only looks at the outgoing flows of goods, and it checks on various issues in a sort of traffic light system. Whether there's all kinds of things have been taken care of, and all kinds of information have been processed in the shipment, in the system before a ground handler can accept a shipment on behalf of the airline. So traditionally, the forwarder would send his trucker with a pile of documents to the handling company, and they would go to a desk and all the documents would be checked and keyed into the system to see whether everything's acceptable for the airline. And now this system is going to replace all of that with various checks on top of it. The next thing is, and here comes the ACN Pass, which is a driver's card, an RFID chip driver's card, which gives the driver access to all ground handlers at Schiphol day and night if they have a valid pass. And we are now connecting these two, the pass with the driver, along with the information of the truck, perhaps a license plate recognition, and that's connected to a certain shipment. And then at entering the gate, the system can check whether all the shipments in the truck are acceptable, and then they can proceed directly to a dock door to get unloaded rather than queuing at a desk to have all the information checked. This system is working now. It's not yet fully implemented by all people. This year we are trying to achieve 100% and make it a standard procedure all over Schiphol, which means sort of educating a few hundred forwarders who send shipments via Schiphol and 6 or 7 ground handlers. And they all have to achieve benefits, and from a rational perspective it's easy to explain to them, but the mental shift is also important, and Reinhard will talk about it later. Next thing is use all this information, and that's the basis of the AirLink project. Use all the information to optimize the logistics process. Do we have time for the short video? I think we do.
cargo handling community at Schiphol is aiming to be the first in the world to go totally digital. At the moment, every shipment in and out of the international airport has to be documented in detail many times over. There are dozens of rules and regulations applying to every kind of product you can imagine. This is changing. Since late 2010, preparations have been underway to launch a pilot project that will see all this paperwork binned forever. The E-Link initiative comes from ACT, Amsterdam Connecting Trade, together with Schiphol SmartGate Cargo and the umbrella organisation Air Cargo Netherlands.
I think the most important improvement is that the paper will vanish. Since there is a lot of paper work in our system, the air freight forwarding system, saving time, money, saving the environment, but foremost, it will speed up the process.
Chef Schaap, one of the most experienced drivers at the airport, is going to walk us through the new E-Link systems. With his ACN smart card, which contains all the old paperwork for the shipment he's collecting today, he can log in with no delays and get busy. The freight forwarder, DB Schenker, has joined the pilot project along with Hellman, Aerocar and the transport company Schiphol Express Intervracht. Also involved are 3 cargo handlers, Menzies Aviation, WFS and Avia Partner. For the drivers, the new system is making their job easier and more efficient.
E-Link is voor mij een mooie uitkomst. Je hebt geen papieren, geen documenten meer. De spullen die je laat bij de klant, die scan je allemaal met de ACM-pas. Je gaat het lossen, je scant met de ACM-pas. En je hoeft geen papieren meer, je hoeft niet meer naar het kantoor. Je bent met alles, met 5 minuten ben je klaar. Dat is E-Link. Dat is voor mij prettiger om mee te werken.
For the companies responsible for storing, handling and transporting the cargo at Schiphol, the E-Link revolution includes state-of-the-art truck number plate recognition. And it all means much quicker operations at much lower costs, essential if Schiphol is to retain its leading international position for cargo.
The main profit for E-Link for us is time. Our trucks spend a lot of time waiting at desks, offices, in order to get the paperwork done. With E-Link we are able to send the information that the handling agents need via electronic means, which means that as soon as the trucks arrive here, all the data is available and we have speedy access to the warehouse.
The driver's smart card gives him hassle-free and secure entrance to every location at the airport that he needs to access. And it gives him permission to start unloading. After that, the card can log the change of responsibility for the cargo from the driver to the warehouse manager. E-Link also acts as a high-tech track and trace system to monitor and follow every shipment, providing detailed data wherever it's needed.
For instance, a freight forwarder, he would like to deliver his export shipment to the ground handler, and he has to fulfill several procedures before he can do that. And with E-Link, he can check if his shipment is ready for a take-in at the ground handler, and that means there is a green lane for him. And we can link information from that party to a truck and a driver. And that information is airway bill data, and customs information and documents.
Underpinning the whole process is the need to establish innovative customs clearance procedures that will reduce long queues and speed things up. There's already some success. First results of the E-Link pilot show a 25% reduction in some cargo handling times.
The value of E-Link is to create secure trade lanes, secure logistic lanes, because we start at the forwarder by the loading process, and actually we identify the truck driver the cargo and the truck itself. And we can use this information through the whole process of, through the whole logistic chain.
Saving time and money is essential for the future of Schiphol. Success involves forward thinking. To maintain its position as one of the world's leading airports at the heart of Europe's logistical hub, the whole cargo community must invest in the latest ICT and in its high-quality workforce. The E-Link pilot shows the way to go.
We would like to distinguish Schiphol Airport as a main port within Europe, and we want to be compatible for the e-future.
Here in Amsterdam Airport, we try to do our utmost to create more efficiency and also become the first digital cargo community in the world. And so E-Link is a very important part of that process.
The virtual solution, E-Link, is the real-world connection between every means of advanced cargo logistics. Think about it. One smart card, one system that takes every freight consignment through the entire transport, storage and distribution network. Beyond Schiphol, beyond logistics.
That's clear. I mean, that's 25% time gains. That's more efficiency, security, get rid of the paper. So why is it so difficult to convince? So how do you convince freight forwarders to participate in this? Reinoud, can you tell me a bit about that mental shift that they have to go through then? I feel like the roaming reporter here. So
give it to me. Well, the funny thing is your reaction. I mean, nice movie, and Ben also mentioned it. Let me see, where is it, this one? When this slide was up, I looked at you and I was baffled by your reaction. 38 documents, and nobody was laughing. Don't you think that is laughable? You remind me a little bit of frogs. Frogs who are sitting in water which is getting to the boiling point, but you're so accustomed to what is going on that you're not even surprised. 38 documents. That's insane. That should be enough to put people into motion. But Ben also said, well, the thing is, rational, everybody buys it. But then, well, you have to change. You have to start doing things differently. And well, the sharing of gains, who's going to invest and who's going to have the benefits. That's also a nice discussion. So nothing happens. I mean, for me, I'm not working only in logistics, but for me, it is amazing, utterly amazing the way it works, and still is working with paper and things like that. So what do you have to do to gain this mental shift? And well, that's quite nice. That was your question, eh? Yeah. Shall I continue talking? You can sit down if you have a question. You just call. We use a model, and I will draw it here for you. It is a model. It is about identity. Identity is everything an organization or collaborating organizations are. It's the way they collaborate, the culture, the people who work there, etc., etc. But it's also factors who influence from the outside, like recession, costs, etc., etc., rising cost. Then, based upon that identity, there's mostly a small group of people. They say, we know what we have to do. We are going to do it this way. And that's what we call vision. Good, nice, mostly good visions, but there it mostly goes wrong. Because what happens is that people say, okay, we are going to bring this to the organization and tell them, do this, do something with this, this is what we are going to do. Design or, well, build. And then you have use. Here it goes wrong. Because what happens here, people start to think. And they think, yeah, but if we have to change it, to do it in a different way, well, maybe I lose my job. There are a lot of young people around and they can do it better. So, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I'm going to do this. Maybe we should try to sabotage the system a little bit. And this is the area of frustration and of sabotage and of not working systems. So what should you do? And that's what we say is you have to work on intent. And intent, and it's nice to have this in English, because intent is a strong English word. It is about feeling, experiencing that this vision is the best vision there is, given this identity. Maybe adding, maybe building upon the vision which is already there. And then when I do that, then I build in myself the insight that yes, given this vision, and it is the best vision there is, given this identity, I have felt that I gain the insight that I have to change, that I have to do something, that maybe I have to learn new skills, maybe I have to travel more, maybe I have to, etc., etc. The moment I have that insight, I will take a step, and then together people will start to design, to build and to use. That is the model, which is there. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, okay. Because I can't play the devil's advocate here. That's very nice, nice English buzzwords. And I understand the concept, we have to stop thinking. But how do you do that? You want to have to frame a picture of the future, but how? What is the process you're taking within Airlink?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. Future framing, indeed, is seamless connection, and there are 9 pilots in total. Airlinks is one of them. Future framing is the pilot for the mental shift. So there are 7 more. So what we do is that in a short time frame, we help people to understand and to experience what this vision is. To help them understand that 38 documents is just too much. And in this instance, we have chosen to use a game. And it's a nice game. By the way, this afternoon at 3:30, the game, there will be a short version of the game just over there, I think.
Yeah. So you can briefly experience it. For the people who can't, because they have different colors of paper in their hands, can you please walk us briefly through the process of what you're doing?
Well, the process is, firstly, we bring people in the room and we say, okay, let's do something with logistics. What is logistics? Well, logistics is bringing a package from A to B. Client is ordering something and we have to deliver. And we do it in a very boring way with piepschuim. What is the... Oh, styrofoam blocks, thank you, Lego. Two transporters, etc., etc. Put it in little boxes, which we call containers. Put it in a little crate, what could be a ship or an aeroplane, whatever. And then in every step, paper is involved, just as in real life. So every time when you have this styrofoam block and you bring it to another station, somebody has to sign a paper, to cut it, to put it somewhere, to store it, etc., etc. And there is one mass of frustration there at the end, because it's not written in the right way, the documents are not completely as you want them to, etc., etc. And then we take people back and we ask them, okay, tell me, how can you do this in a better way? And that's interesting, because first we have them experience, in fact, the identity. And then we ask them, what do you think can be better? And they start to think for themselves. And of course, we know the answers already, because that's rational. But they have felt it and experienced it, so suddenly it has to do with feeling, experiencing. So what happens? People tell us transparency, data, all kinds of things like that. That's what we need. Okay, we know that, and we've already built it for you. So we're going to play the game again, go back to your stations, and then we give them an iPad. And on this iPad, you can see, you have a little bit of data transparency, you have a little bit of forecasting, you can see where something is going to happen. And then we let them play the game again. And suddenly, there's no frustration anymore. Suddenly, there is a lot of peace and quiet in the whole chain. No more shouting, no more running around, but just relaxation. And then people start to gain the insight that by working differently, you get a different outcome, less stress, etc., etc. And of course, it is a model. A game is a model of reality. And it's also always, it is made a simplification of the reality. But people have got the message. That is what we do with the game, so people can take this step. Interesting thing is, for Airlinks, we already did a session. We changed the game a little bit, so it is about a forwarder together with a ground handler and the trucking company. The game is a little bit smaller. And we played the game. And it was interesting to see, because the first time the forwarder said, no. After playing with paper, we already do it, everything digital, so this is no use for me. And the funny thing was that there was somebody from the airline and said, oh yes, do you really think so? Do you really think that we are doing it in the right way? Then why last week there was this and this and this and this? And the forwarder looked at him and he said, are you kidding me? And the man from the airline said, no, this is what is happening in real life. And then they played the second part of the game, and they came to, they decided, they made some decisions to start working together in a different way. Because it's interesting to see a system like this. But you know, when a system like this is really starting to work, when all parties involved are going to change their processes, adapt their processes, their working processes, in the possibilities which this system is going to deliver. That is what is needed. So what you need is that you work together, you play together, and playing, homo ludens, the playing people. It brings people to a state in which they are more open to experience, but also to discuss and work together. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we do with Airlink. That's what we do with Seamless Connection in all the other 7 pilots also.
That's quite a powerful tool then, that playing the game, gaining insights, will lead to more collaboration. And that's exactly what you want to achieve.
Yes.
Mental shift and participating in E-Link.
Yeah.
That's it.
What target groups? That was a discussion we had with Airlinks. How are we going to use this tool? Are we going to do it on a management level? Are we going to do it on a level of the truckers? Because it's a nice movie about the trucker. But you know what also happens in real life in situations like this? Trucker comes, Friday evening, there's a big queue, and this one driver passes the queue because he has this beautiful pass. So he brings away his load, he comes back, and then he's beaten up by the other drivers. Because that's no way to behave. So also this whole change and this whole mental shift has to take place with the drivers. So we said, yes, we're going to play it with management, we're going to play it with people who are there performing the tasks, and I'm really looking forward to that, with the drivers.
So if I may conclude, it's very important to include every part of the chain.
Well, it's nice to do so. If everybody takes this step, then you don't have any difficulties in implementing. Yeah. And that's what you don't want. You want the system to integrate seamlessly into your organization.
An inspiring story. Thank you, Reinoud.
Okay.
Do we have a question from the audience?
Well, the thing is that we start with a half-a-day workshops, something like that, and after that, people have got the main message, and they see the benefits, and from there on, people start to talk and convince each other. It's very nice to see this trucker there. I don't know him, I've never met him, but he is really seeing what is there. So he is also talking to his colleagues, and there the start of change. This is the start of change. So I think that depending on the organization, we are now we have played for Airlinks this with one of the forwarders and one airline. And you see that they are on management level, they got the message and they are working on it. So it can be rather quick. Depends on how many people there are.
I think the game is a tool. So initially it will take half a day, as Reinoud says. But of course you have to give it follow-up. And you have to be on the ball.
No, but I like the question because it's not a tool, it's a process. And that's your question. And this is and it is very difficult because it depends on the situation you're in, and sometimes it can be very quick. But you have, and I agree with you, you have to design it to make sure that you start, that you follow up, that you take out any resistance, that you build upon the vision, etc., etc. So I think it's a difficult question. Yeah, there is. I mean, but in the innovation workshop, which is this afternoon over there, what you see is we bring people to 2017. And we have interviews about how the world looks there. Then the freight forwarder is not there anymore. Because he is there because of the intransparency in the chain. But he has changed his role. He is now really adding value. And that is the discussion which is really necessary. Is a party in this chain, is it going to be there in 3 years? Or do you have to change today to make sure that you can survive the coming years? Nice discussions. Yeah, there is hesitation, but we try to channel it into the discussion of what should you do today to make sure you're going to survive as a chain, but also as when I'm a forwarder, an expediter, then in transparency is my game now. That is going to change. What if Google is going to open up a supply chain? There's transparency everywhere. Then, dear Mr. Expediter, what is going to be your role? What are you going to do today to make sure that you survive?
I think we're going to start with a small exercise here. It's about to get very, very dark. And just imagine what we see in CO3. Coming into CO3, this is the logistics industry as we see it today. I don't know if you can find each other, let alone even think about collaboration. But that first step, that magic ingredient, is actually to turn on the lights. Aha. And we create in this way visibility. You create visibility to potential partners, whether they be in the same industry sector, cross-industry sector, across mode, across shippers to LSPs. This is the way we see collaboration starting. A person that Sven and I have known for a number of years now, who's been involved with this from the shipper side, from the shipper side, used to come to these collaboration network meetings and speak to other shippers, and he was one of them, and he kept saying to this group, cost is the common enemy. Now we're saying, we're extending that, we're saying cost and CO2 is the common enemy for all of us. And this is what we should aspire to. Now, the pushback from some of the shippers is, well, wait a minute now. You know, we see our purchasing strategies, particularly around logistics and transportation, as being proprietary and giving us a strategic advantage. And then this gentleman returns and he looks right at him and says, well, I see collaboration as a strategic advantage. So we have two schools of thought in the industry today. We have, on the one side, collaboration as being an advantage for shippers and LSPs, and then we have the other side. And at this point, this is where CO3 comes in. Let the battle begin.
Thank you, Mike. If I could maybe just have that, the microphone of Mike. CO3 is very much a project which is trying to sell a vision. I heard some very interesting words from the previous speaker on vision and ambition, and I think that's what CO3 does. If you look at CO3, by the way, stands for Collaborative Concepts for Co-Modality, for those of you who don't yet know the project. It's very much an attempt to unite the industry, to create transparency and to innovate, to become more efficient, to become more sustainable, which I think in the end is to the benefit of everyone, all of the players in the industry, and also to the benefit of society. So once that, let's say, illumination is created and you connect it with a vision, then you could end up with a very powerful movement. And this, I think, is what CO3 is in the process of becoming. Looking at the vision, what is this vision? If you look at the white paper published by the European Commission in 2011, the transportation white paper, there are some very clear visions and some very ambitious goals in there. What does Europe want to do? What do we want to do as a European Communion? First of all, we want to make the transportation and logistics industry more efficient and more sustainable, because we know for a fact that there is a lot of intransparency and a lot of waste. If you would take at random a truck off the road anywhere in Europe, there would be 1 out of 4 chances that this truck would be empty, running around empty. And we've seen statistics from North America, United States, where the situation is exactly the same. So we do know that there are efficiencies to be gained in transportation and logistics. Why do we want to gain those efficiencies? Why do we want to realize them? First of all, or secondly, also because there is a big environmental component there. 20 to 25% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally are caused by transportation and mobility. So if we can even reduce that by, let's say, a couple of percent, that would already be an enormous impact on the global warming situation. Some other arguments that Europe is, let's say, projecting into the future: we do not have a lot of fossil fuel. We don't have a lot of petrol in the European Union. The countries that have petrol stayed out of the Union for very obvious reasons. So we said, well, if the transportation and logistics industry is mainly operating on fossil fuel, then it's to all of our benefits to do that as efficiently as possible. And so by cutting carbon emissions by 60% by 2050, that also means we have to reduce energy consumption in logistics by 60% by 2050. We have to increase multimodality because the roads are congested, and we all have to become more efficient and sustainable. To do this, we already learned in the past, we need to bundle freight flows and to basically create economies of scale in the transportation and logistics system. And to make that possible, you need to put large companies, large shippers into the same room and let them collaborate, offer them the tools to collaborate, and give them the tools to produce this mental shift and make it into practice. And this is very much in line with the idea of the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. These go hand in hand. You cannot separate one element out of the other ones. So we need drastic innovation, and drastic innovation needs to be carried by many partners, many parties in the supply chain, and that's why you need a project, a program like CO3. What is CO3? It is a project running for 36 months. We are about halfway now. We have 18 partners. I will introduce them in a moment. And basically the intention is to not only develop, but also fine-tune and test in real-life situations, real-life test cases with real-life companies, test those elements, those building blocks into practice, and learn together how we can apply them in the future to make logistics more sustainable and more efficient. The budget of the consortium is 2 million provided by the Commission exactly to reach that goal by the summer of next year. These are the consortium partners, quite a lot of innovative players, universities, knowledge institutes, for example, Dinalog. A number of shippers are involved, or let's say one big shipper, P&G, or the research side of P&G is involved. We have some logistics universities, as I said, some spin-off companies, some small companies, all specialized in horizontal collaboration, because basically that's what CO3 is all about. CO3 is not operating for itself or for the fun of it. We operate to make a change in the market, so we need a broad basis to work with, and that's the High-Level Industry Board, a group of 40 multinational companies, shippers, LSPs, intermediaries, technology companies that come together twice a year to monitor the progress of CO3, to give suggestions, and to basically keep us going and to kick us forward. CO3 has a number of very distinct deliverables. We need to do, or we need to achieve very real targets by next year. And I think we're well underway as a consortium to reach those targets. First of all, the first main building block in the toolbox is an operational framework for horizontal collaboration. How can companies collaborate in an antitrust compliant setting? How can they approach each other? What are the rules of engagement? All of these things need to be tested, need to be documented, and need to be also disseminated. I mentioned the fact that if you want to collaborate and create or achieve real-life gains and also very big environmental benefits, you need to put very large companies into the same room. Companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, BASF, Kraft, all of the big boys. And if you do this, then immediately you come onto the radar screen of antitrust. So one of the big building blocks of CO3 is to provide an antitrust compliant, a legal safe zone to enable horizontal collaboration between very large companies, according to a number of different business models, and all of these models have to be tested into practice. Now, the previous speaker said that to get things really going, to get things in motion, you don't need only a vision, but you need a behavioral change. And to do this, you can only do this by working interactively with companies, with players in the chain, with shippers, with LSPs, with intermediaries. And you also need some new functions to make that happen. In CO3, we have different work packages, and work package 4 is the one which is basically taking care of the test projects, involving real companies, real supply chains into test projects, learning from those test cases, and disseminating that knowledge back to the market.
Now, the new actor that we're talking about, this new role, this new function, and we loved hearing about the fact that the forwarder's role today is not going to be the forwarder's role 3 years from now. Well, that same theory, I think, applies in terms of collaboration. What we see, and we've sort of coined this phrase in our introductory white paper, CO3 white paper that was put out by one of our consortium partners. We've coined the phrase neutral trustee. And at first we started talking about the idea of a neutral trustee as a totally new role, a new legal entity. As we've learned from the test projects, that's not always the case, because what we're now seeing is that this neutral trustee has certain functions. And certain functions have to be done, they have to be done independent of the participants that are actually involved in collaboration. Mm-hmm. But some of those functions, particularly when you start looking at the examples on the right-hand side, these are functions that can be taken over by existing LSPs, by existing 3PLs, so as well as the ones on the left. I mean, the whole idea of neutrality is that you're not involved. You have no stake in the game in terms of, profit from transportation, profit from warehousing. Your stake in the game is to make collaboration work. Yep. So obviously, looking at things like matchmaking, creating critical mass, which means organizing and facilitating shippers, whether it be top-down or bottom-up in terms of creating groups of shippers that want to work together. Obviously, as Sven said, the key here is legal compliance, particularly when we have in the room competitors in the same market sector, companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever or Kraft and Nestle, somebody like that. They're very, very focused on anti-compliant or on antitrust compliance. And of course, there are these rules of engagement that we have to frame, and the neutral trustee tries to facilitate in terms of entry and exit, data confidentiality, etc. So,
what CO3 basically wants to do is to create a process that drives collaboration forward from scratch, from a white sheet of paper, identify compatible freight flows, make the match between the companies behind those freight flows, come to a certain set of rules of engagement to operate in a legally safe manner, and after the matchmaking, look at it maybe as a marriage counselor, Then comes the marriage. And this is a whole other type of business. You need maybe some real-time involvement into the operation to synchronize freight flows, to consolidate freight flows, to manage incidents. And this is what we have on the right-hand side of the slide, what we called in the white paper the online function. A better word maybe is the real-time function. In that case, the neutral party, the neutral referee, becomes an active player in the community, but operates on behalf of the community to maximize the total gains for all of the partners in that community. That includes the shippers, but that also includes the carriers or the logistic service providers. So those are the types of things we are developing and testing within CO3. We are testing them in 4 distinct situations, which have an increasing level of complexity. And we're happy to say that for most of these types of test projects, CO3 has already done the first steps and has already gotten to the first results. For example, last year we achieved, through the CO3 methodology and toolset, we achieved a match between a producer of metal components and a producer of plastics components in the Czech Republic. And we were able to mix and bundle those 2 flows going to the automotive sector in Germany, whereby making the volumetric capacity utilization of the trucks almost 100%, and by synchronizing part loads of volume goods and heavy goods, which was basically producing a lot of not only financial but also CO2 gains for the collaborating companies. We very recently, only last week, we finished a test case whereby we put together in a community 4 large shippers with transportation flows between Spain and between Belgium in both directions, and we were able to synchronize those flows to put them not only on short sea instead of road going through France, but to come to some kind of closed loop with dedicated assets, dedicated trailers, with optimal asset utilization. Really what is called in theory a synchro-modal community. This is the type of stuff that CO3 is doing. We've got another test case between PepsiCo and Nestlé that are collaborating to share capacity to distribute to the retail sector fresh and chilled food products. So optimizing, synchronizing the part loads to the companies like Carrefour, to Deleuze, to Albert Heijn, etc. That's the type of stuff we want to do with real-life companies. And one of the future projects we hope to announce is a collaboration whereby not only transportation and warehousing, but also value-added services will come into the game, because that's where the value is created. That's also how employment is created and is protected in the European economy.
We just had another test project, and this is a cross-industry project that went, very happy to say, operational, which means trucks are now on the road as of last
week, yeah.
Between companies in 2 industry sectors, one from the healthcare industry, one from FMCG, operating a synchronized round trip between Belgium and France. Obviously, the things that we see as breakthroughs there are not only the fact that we are able to overlap industries now, which is really what collaboration is all about. It's not simply getting all the FMCG players together and working inside that group, but having them work cross-industry. But we're also looking at overlapping and synchronizing different types of supply chains. In the case of the healthcare company, they're very stable flows going from plant to distribution center. In the case of the FMCG company, they're going from distribution center direct to customer. Now, a year ago, 2 years ago, companies would have said, no, we're not going to go near that. It's too risky. All of a sudden, they're seeing, with a little bit of coordination, synchronization, work with the neutral trustee through CO3, it's a reality. The trucks are actually starting to operate and will increase as time goes on. So we're very
delivering both cost benefits and CO2 benefits, reducing
Yes.
empty miles. That's what we want to do in CO3. How do you create collaboration from scratch? You need a process. You need a certain procedure to follow and a chronology. And this is what we call in CO3 the 3-step methodology. It consists out of 3 very simple logical phases. First of all, identification of collaboration potential. That's what you need to do, create the visibility, turn on, switch on the lights. Secondly, put the collaborating companies or candidate collaborating companies together in a room and build a business case and help them to create this business case as a neutral facilitator, as a neutral referee even. And then thirdly, of course, the most important thing to make this a success and to get to behavioral change is to come into operation, to get trucks on the road, as Mike said, and to really become a daily operational collaboration process. All of these phases have a lot of thinking and a lot of technology behind them. And just to give some ideas of what CO3 is using in terms of technological toolbox, ICT toolbox, we have different, let's say, matchmaking mechanisms. We have a 4C, a cross-chain control tower in place in the third phase, in the operational phase. We have what we call a Shapley value gain sharing calculator in place. All of these things are being now integrated and being tested to make the collaboration process in itself a very streamlined and a very efficient activity.
Yeah. And what you're seeing here is the overlapping of, as Sven said, the ICT tools with the methodology that has been created. Actually, I think this is originally a TreeVisor slide, but as we were discussing, it's actually a methodology that both TreeVisor and Juventus have used in the past to facilitate collaborative communities. But going through all of the steps from identification, which is really creating the matches, the preparation, dressing everybody up, getting them ready to to go to the ball, and then actually putting them out in public and making the collaboration work in real time. And all those tools that we need to make that happen are things that we're testing on a constant basis with within the CO3 project, starting with the matchmaking, the quick scan analysis, as we call it, which gives shippers and LSPs a visualization of their networks. Going forward with, as Sven said, the Shapley calculator, which is a work in progress, because we'll talk a little bit about Shapley later, but when we show you this formula, thank God it's not on the bottom now.
We took it off.
It scares people, but when we say this is what it actually does and this is what the benefits are, they say, well, make it easier to use, and this is what we're doing. We're learning as we go in this project, how the market's going to react and how we're going to use these tools in practice, because simply having them in a laboratory isn't enough. Shippers have to be comfortable and LSPs have to be comfortable enough to apply them on a scalable basis.
And maybe a very important last remark to this slide. All of these components and all of these tools in ICT technologies, some of them are quite new. The Shapley calculator is less than 12 months old, but some of the other components go back 5, 6, 7 years. They have a history, they have been proven in very specific conditions, but for the very first time, and this is the real value of CO3, all of these building blocks, all of these tools are brought together in an integrated environment, in an integrated process, really created to drive collaboration forward and to scale it up. All of the things we do in CO3 need to be scalable, need to be repeatable, and we really want to hand that over to the market and then let the market mechanisms start to play and really make it a domino effect or a snowball effect in the end.
So the next thing that we're looking at, and we wanted to do this because we wanted to focus on the practical application of horizontal collaboration strategies in the marketplace, and this is a little bit of a busy slide, but we're looking at 3 tracks. We're looking at basically what we're doing today, particularly in the test projects, and what has to happen, what shippers and LSPs have to feel comfortable with in the future, is actually creating networks. Now, networks can be created in one of 2 ways. They can be created top down, where you have, an affected dating service, with shippers, large, medium size, small, put their lane data into a big platform. We turn around and say, well, you match up with you, and you match up with you, and you match up with you, and all of a sudden, you've got all of these things sprouting all over the place. That's a vision for the future, okay? I mean, we have the tools that we're developing that will support that, but it's not there today. The market's starting to ask for it, surprisingly enough. They want to say, we need help with that, so they're asking for it. But what we're finding, and this is where the test projects come in, is we're identifying a single shipper as a starting point. Let's use Kraft as a good example. They're active in the test projects, they're active in the high-level industry board for CO3, and they're saying, okay, I'll pick a partner, and I will start with that one partner. And then, once that relationship gets going, either we will add a 3rd partner and a 4th partner, and that's when we start testing gain-sharing mechanisms and a multi-party legal framework. But we also start looking at daisy-chaining this, because each partner, let's say, that Kraft brings in, may want to start a relationship with a 3rd party, and then another party, and another party. And this is where it actually really starts to spring out, and you get this viral effect of collaboration, building from the ground up.
Yeah. The key word on this slide, I think, is communities. What collaborative networks are they are communities of multiple independent players that collaborate together, work together to achieve a common goal. Moderated by a neutral function, a neutral trustee, a neutral referee to optimize the maximize the gains of that community. And basically, To create a community, you need to have an incentive. That incentive can be either a cost reduction, can be a CO2 reduction, can be modal shift, but really to ignite that process, you need to drive it forward using the CO3 methodology. And then even starting from a single lane, we hope to achieve, to demonstrate that this will lead to network effects, to a viral effect, and that a community of 2 players maybe in the end can end up with 4, 5, 6 players, that it can go from less than full truckloads to full truckloads to intermodal connections, and really that there is an intrinsic growth effect designed into the collaborative communities.
And we see this, this last track, the neutral trustee, or as we now call the neutral trustee, jokingly but really effectively the cat herder, is there to facilitate that. And this is something that doesn't have to be a new legal entity. It doesn't have to be a totally new function. It's something that, as I said earlier, can be picked up by the existing actors and players in the logistics industry today. We're giving them the tools to change the way they do business.
Yeah, the function had to be created, but who says in 2017 this function cannot be offered as one of the many functions offered by, for example, a freight forwarder? That party could be acting as a trustee in a very specific set of conditions or within a community of its own clients and shippers, for example. We have a number of bundling scenarios, just to talk you through very quickly. What are the type of synergy effects we want to realize and want to achieve in the market? A very simple one, and this is referring to groupage, and one of the first questions we got in the past when we introduced CO3 was, okay, what is the difference with groupage when you bundle, let's say, part loads onto the shared capacity of a single truck? The extra, let's say, sauce we're adding in CO3, I think, is synchronization. What we've seen in groupage for the past 30, 40 years is consolidation of loads, part loads, geographically, in space, putting them on the same truck to the same destination when they fell on top of each other almost coincidentally. What we do now in CO3, in horizontal collaboration, is to actively synchronize those loads and to put to co-load part loads together to create, for example, full truckloads. Another option is to combine very large, very thick and very efficient FTL flows, for example, with very expensive, very fragmented LTL, less than full truckload flows, and you inject the part loads into the base flow. And this creates for both of the parties in the community, through the gain sharing effect, a significant cost reduction effect. And then you basically get the effect of carpooling. There's a car with 3 people going to Italy. It's very cheap for the fourth party, for the fourth person, to jump on that car or on that bus and to take that joint capacity and go to the destination. What you also want to do to maximize efficiency, to reduce empty kilometers, is to make sure that the transportation assets that you have, or that the carrier or the transport provider puts into the game, are optimally used. And for example, you do this by making sure that every time a truck, for example, delivers a load, that there is another load ready in the vicinity to pick up with a minimal amount of empty kilometers, so that the truck keeps moving, the driver keeps moving, there is no waste, not in distance, not in time, not in capacity utilization.
By the way, this is something that we found, again, when we got into the test projects, that the participants were really pushing us on, is, especially in FMCG, they're not nearly concerned with the smaller loads, with the LTL. Their biggest pain point is obviously to reduce their FTL, which is where they've got, in the case of most of these shippers, 90% plus of their volumes, and the LTL is shrinking. Now, as you get higher up the so-called food chain into different industries, we see that changing a little bit. There's more interest, for example, in healthcare and pharmaceuticals on some of the LTL. I think we have to move along the.
So
there's somebody that's sharpening the hook a little bit.
So what do we want to achieve in the end? Basically, fewer and friendlier transportation kilometers and making the network sweat. Some of the technology components we use to make this happen, and some of the technology requirements are quite clear. CO3 very recently published a white paper on these aspects, so if you want to go in detail on that one, we invite you to have a look at the CO3 website or the LinkedIn group, or to reach out to one of the CO3 consortium members and to really go in depth on that level. But we have a few movies and a few, let's say, screenshots that will show you that what we're talking about is not theoretical, it's not academic, it's really happening as we speak. It is consisting of existing tools, an existing toolbox, etc.
So what you're going to see next is, and I think we can just swip to the slide. This basically goes back to our methodology. And what we've done is we've sort of looked at this now and said, okay, we really think that combining two of these phases, they overlap so much. Now, there'll still be three phases, but the flows and the workflow, particularly where the ICT is concerned, are things that we're going to sort of show you in a very quick movie, and we're going to probably only go through about half of it because I don't think we have time. The movie itself is 10 minutes, so we'll cut it to 5 just to get you the highlights of it. But as Sven said, we want to show you that it's real, okay?
We'll show you two movies, actually, one on the left-hand side of this methodology, one on the right-hand side. This is the, let's say, the online trustee, the control tower, but before you get to that point, you need some kind of matchmaking and you need to set up the community. And this is how this is happening in CO3. We'll also
and this is something that we think is going to be, you know, a tool that can be put out into the market to start with. So I don't know if you want to click on the movie. And I'm going to sort of walk through these steps because what you're going to see on the screen are some of the things that we do in a network. This is actually the CO3 matchmaking platform that actually it also acts as a facilitator. What you're seeing here is an overview of the type of data, and we always talk about this in terms of big data. We always talk about the fact that you could collaborate. Let's say JSP and Hammerweg out of Czech Republic. That was a line of sight collaboration. They were in the same office park. They knew each other. They didn't know they were moving in the same direction, but they were able to actually go in and collaborate because they talked about it. Once you get outside of that, the whole idea is to look for situations where you have, something that may not be visible, or because there are so many lanes. We have over 9,000 structural trade lanes now in the CO3 database that we're working with, and we have probably another 2,000 yet to come in that we just simply haven't played with yet. So what you're seeing now is this matchmaking. You're seeing the network actually being configured, a shipper being configured, and you're seeing a shipper choosing which partners and relationships they want to work with in the network. So this is both configuring the network as individual shippers, but also saying, okay, I want to work with these companies. I don't want to work with those companies. So this is data that we don't share. This is
very much driven by the shippers themselves. So when CO3 went out to the market 2 years ago, the first thing CO3 asked to shippers was, do you want to participate? Do you believe in the vision? And can we have some of your data to find collaboration potential? And of course, we're not forcing anybody to collaborate. Before we bring two shippers together, we'll ask to each of them whether they are interested to collaborate with the other party. Right. And only if both say yes, we will bring them into the same room and try to get them.
So here's what we're doing. Right. We're capturing actually high-level structural trade lane data at a very granular level in terms of creating constraints, whether it's full truckload, less than truckload, what some of the shipment types are, whether it's chilled or refrigerated, but at the same time saying, we don't necessarily have to say you can't collaborate. In the case of the test project that went live last week, one shipper was using refrigerated equipment, one shipper was using dry. Mm-hmm. The economics worked out that both shippers now use the refrigerated equipment going round trip. They just simply don't use the cooling component on one leg of it. The second piece of it is actually how we're configuring the search parameters. Thank you. And this is basically because what we're looking at, and if we're looking at bundling, are we looking at bundling here? No, we're actually looking at, we're looking at how we bundle loads. We're looking at radius searches at origin and destination that can be changed to suit the individual network. So we can look at, let's say, 100 kilometer search radius at origin and 50 kilometers narrowing at destination, or vice versa. The second one is simply the way we're looking at round trips. We're configuring it both around the number of empty kilometers, but also the percentage of empty kilometers. When we get into a highly dense lane corridor, let's say like France and Spain, we can look at a higher percentage of empty as long as we keep the actual empty running to a lower level. And then this is the output, where we come in with showing shippers where their matches are, what the equipment is, what the balance of flows are, and how we can cover all of this.
And this is very much supporting the, let's say, the community creation, because out of the data analysis, out of the data mining actually, the automatic data processing, may become hundreds or thousands of possible matches, and all of these need to be screened, and all of these need to be discussed with the collaborating parties or the candidate collaborating parties to find the ones which are, let's say, the quickest wins. Within CO3, we're looking for quick wins to demonstrate that the methodology can work and that this methodology will deliver cost reductions and CO2 reductions. But all of these things are scalable, so if two companies start to collaborate on one trade lane, the intention, of course, will be that they will afterwards also switch on a second and a third and a fifth and maybe 100 collaborative trade lanes with optimized capacity
And this is
utilization.
exactly what we're hearing from shippers. They say, this is great, we want to start with one. They know the first one is the toughest, but then they're all of a sudden saying, I want to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more on a commercial basis. They don't want to stop here. And this is sort of the excitement, I think, that we're getting to in terms of looking at this. So what you're seeing here is you're simply seeing different combinations that we're looking at, different routes that we're looking at. We're going to actually jump ahead, I think, in a second. This is just simply another way of looking at the market. We were looking at the market saying, well, let's look at closed-loop round trips, that aren't necessarily visible. Now all of a sudden the market's saying to us, look at pivot points, look at going into the UK, but I don't necessarily have my carrier doesn't need to come back from France to the UK because I may have a driver that's coming out of Hungary or out of the Czech Republic. They want to keep that asset moving. So all of a sudden the market was telling us to look even at empty running in a different way. Yep. If we can get to a point where they can load and reload, and even very efficient companies we found, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So even in an internal collaboration, let alone the fact that you don't know what your neighbor is doing, there's these blinding flashes of the obvious that are popping up. What you're seeing here is simply the way we're managing these bundles and these co-loading opportunities that Sven talked about, these opportunities to mix FTL and LTL and create clusters either at origin or destination. Again, which shippers don't see because they don't communicate with each other, they don't share information.
The visibility. And the next step for CO3, we might never reach that point, is to combine those clusters of activity, those concentrations of freight flows with intermodal connection points to connect freight flows which are going via road. That's plan B, going via short sea maybe or via rail into the future. So this is the next challenge for the coming 12 months. Maybe we skip to the
time, I think, let's switch over. I mean, we can talk about this. You can, get more information. We might put up some of these, more brief movies on the CO3 website as well.
So this was an example of the data mining process, the geographical information systems, and all of the data processing which is happening in the preparation phases, phase 1 and phase 2 of the CO3 methodology. On the right-hand side, of course, and this is very much linked with the 4C concept, the cross-chain control centers, you need an operational entity, again a neutral entity, which is in real time offering, let's say, facilitation services to communities to make sure that none of the loading meters or none of the kilometers in a community are being wasted. And this is very much the difference with, for example, traditional groupage offered by, let's say, logistics and transportation service providers for the past 30, 40 years. Looking at 3 shippers in a network, you could call it even a sort of community. 3 shippers X, Y, and Z have part loads to, for example, a destination in Spain or in Italy. And of course, the service provider, DHL or Schenker, will put those pallets, those loads on the same truck when they depart on the same day. Now, what DHL cannot do today, given the current contractual setup, is to ask to the shipper in many cases, well, if you wait one day with your shipment or if you accelerate it to a day earlier, then I can create a bundling effect with your neighbor. This is what we intend to do in CO3, and that's what we call, in that case, active orchestration. We really don't only consolidate freight flows geographically in space, but we add the component of synchronization in time, which means in the end that you can transport the same volume of goods with a far lower amount of transport capacity, with far higher efficiency, lower cost, and a lot less CO2 emission. And how that works in practice, we will show you here. This is a visualization of what we call within Trivisor the cross-supply chain cockpit. It is a 4C, a cross-chain control center. You see here the actual process of the control tower capturing the transport orders from the different shippers in a community. Those transport orders will have a required destination date, or they will have certain flexibility, a drop date which is between or before a deadline and which can be, let's say, extended a bit or put on an earlier date. And what the planners in the cockpit will do is try to maximize the combinations and the efficiency of the different loads by synchronizing over time. This is a semi-automatic process. The planners will also try to, for example, look if loads can be put on top of each other, if pallets can be stacked to increase the capacity utilization of the trucks. What's happening here in a way is basically playing almost three-dimensional Tetris to make sure that every transport capacity, every truck, every train, every short sea vessel in the end, maybe every airplane in the end, will be used to maximal capacity. This system is linked, of course, with the carrier systems, and all of the information which is centralized there is accessible to all of the parties within the community with respect for antitrust agreements and with respect for, let's say, data confidentiality. And all of this process can lead eventually even to the invoicing, because every activity, transport activity in the community is captured by the 4C, by the cross-chain control center, and it is ideal, of course, and very efficient to use that same data to create the transport invoices out of that central control tower, already including the gain share effects which have been created together.
The thing that you're seeing here in all of this, and we're going to sort of tie this up a little bit, is the fact that we've got ICT tools now that are being actively applied to the collaboration process. And to the extent that we can start continually demonstrating their effectiveness to the communities, to the shipper communities, to the LSPs, to the service, the logistics service providers, is really what is going to cement this going forward.
Yep.
So I mean, this is what we're so excited about.
What we're starting to see now is really the mental shift, because the first test cases were quite hard to achieve, but they have been achieved, and what we're now demonstrating is that they are repeatable and scalable. And this is, of course, helping companies to change the mindset and to really go faster and to look for each other, to look for partners, and to start this collaborative dialogue. One last component, which is very important in CO3, we wanted also to share with you. This is the famous Shapley value, or the notorious Shapley value. It looks very complicated. It's a mathematical formula. It's basically invented by a Mr. Lloyd Shapley already a couple of decades ago. This Mr. Shapley got the Nobel Prize for Economics in December of last year for his concept of Shapley value, which enables a community of collaborating players to share the gain or the cost of the collaboration in the most fair, in the most transparent way. So the Shapley value will be an essential component into the future, especially when very large companies, very large freight flows will start playing together and will start creating synergy effects. And this will be built into the whole setup, the whole DNA of CO3 from the very start.